Today, classes moved online for students at Columbia. The university president saying they'll give the Ivy League school a chance to consider next steps. Pro-Palestine protests have rocked the campus. Last week, more than 100 people were arrested after the school asked police to remove student protesters. These protests have become vulgar and threatening at times. The following video, which was taken on Saturday night, was provided to CNN by the Columbia's Chabad organization.
Israel, 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 Israel.
A rabbi associated with the school urged Jewish students to, quote, return home as soon as possible and remain home for the time being. CNN talked to some Jewish students on Columbia's campus.
Particularly the last few days, I've felt uncomfortable around this university. I've felt like this is not a welcoming environment.
As far as walking around on campus, I will say I still feel safe. I don't want that to be any kind of excuse for these people. They've made the campus hostile feeling.
So you're supposed to graduate in a month, is it here? So you don't think you'll go?
I don't think it's safe.
Panel is back. Frank, for a couple things. You recently wrote the cover story in The Atlantic saying that the golden age of American Jews is ending. You were also a Columbia University graduate and were recently on campus speaking to a Jewish organization there.
Yeah.
Can you help us understand how we got to this point? What is it about the campus that has brought these protests? Why these protests are honestly different and worse than not all other protests going on in the country, but certainly they really stick out.
A couple things need to be said about the Columbia campus. First, it's in the middle of New York City, and New York City is a place that has always had a very active left. And so you've had at various moments this combination of forces outside the campus merging with forces inside the campus. Second, Columbia has this incredible legacy of protest. And so I think that when students meet a moment like this, it almost feels like it's as if their duty as Columbia students to go join the protest. I know I did when I was a Columbia student. And then third of all, it has this history of a Middle East Studies department that's always been especially radical on the Palestinian question. And so you have students who've been taught by professors to have the sort of impassioned activism that's been on display. And then no university has figured out how to deal with these protests, whether the protest has been very disruptive to life on campus. There were good reasons for the university president to come in and to try to deal with the chaos so that the university continue to function, so that there's not a heckler's veto that's happening, where the loudest, most radical voices have control over the discourse. But what we've seen is that by going in and cracking down, it's just further inflamed the situation. It's becoming about more than just Palestine. And what's happened is protesters say that they're just criticizing Israel. And I believe that in a lot of their minds, that's their intent. But there's a whole vocabulary that they have for talking about what's happening on campus that veers almost directly into anti-Semitism, where they accuse Jewish donors, they accuse Jewish forces in the world for ordering the crackdown. It's not the university president acting on her own. There's a cabal.
Those are straight up anti-Semitic tropes right there that you outline.
Yeah, and I'll even go further. It's not almost anti-Semitism, it is anti-Semitism. And this is something that is on display right now, but the sort of roots of this kind of devolving from A to B go back millennia. And this is something, the roots of anti-Semitism that pop up in societies that frankly tend to be a canary in the coal mine for a society and a democracy in this case that is in a lot of trouble. It is, I like to look at this and replace Jews with any other minority group here. And what would the entire country be doing? They would be outraged, rightly so. It is not just Palestinian rights. I got the letter that you reported on that the rabbi at Columbia sent saying that Jewish students, you're not safe here, from a parent of a Columbia University student. I got it yesterday morning. And this person's daughter has heard things like, you're a Nazi, things like, go kill yourself, and even worse things. That's not protest. That's harassment, and it is on the brink of violence. And the fact that these Jewish students feel so unsafe, and it is so systemic when it comes from ultimately going back from classes that don't necessarily get policed, that is dangerous.
Yeah, and not just classes that don't get policed, it's TAs and people who aren't teaching about the Middle East in particular use their position to have a soapbox. But I think especially for Orthodox students, and they tend, for various reasons, to get written out of people's concerns. But if you wear a kippah, if you dress in an Orthodox sort of way, all of this hatred ends up just being directed onto you on a campus like Columbia. They don't know your point of view about the conflict in Israel. They're just assumptions that get made. Mm-hmm. And they're the ones who suffered the comments, most of the comments that Dan was talking about, that they really, it's primal, the way in which they just get assailed with this anti-Semitism.
Would you feel safe, either of you, with a child, a Jewish child attending a university like this right now?
I think, I would have a lot of anxiety about it, but it also makes me sad to hear a rabbi say that students should not feel safe going onto campus. Even with these protests happening, I feel as if backing down in that sort of way almost gives the protesters exactly what they want. And I think it's really the onus should be on the university to create safe conditions for students.
Yeah. What do you think, Dana?
I don't know. I mean, I'm mixed. I think that ultimately you can't let them win. And when I say them, I'm talking about like the true hateful comments. Everybody has a right to disagree with the policies of a democratic government, and that is what is happening in Israel. People in Israel disagree with the policies of their elected government. That does not give people the right to be full on vile and full of hate. And the sort of anti-Zionism, anti-Netanyahu government, that has left the building a long time ago when it comes to what you're actually seeing in not all of the cases, but many of these cases. It is raw hatred towards Jews.
Yeah, well, here's how Democratic Senator John Fetterman put it. He was talking about a White House statement. Let's start with the White House. They said, quote, while every American has the right to peaceful protest, calls for violence and physical intimidation targeting Jewish students and the Jewish community are blatantly anti-Semitic, unconscionable, and dangerous. And then Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania has actually lost a couple of staffers from his office, reportedly because they disagree with him about this particular issue. He wrote this: I fully agree with the White House. These, quote, protests, end quote, are anti-Semitic, unconscionable, and dangerous. Add some tiki torches and it's Charlottesville for these Jewish students. To Columbia president, do your job or resign so Columbia can find someone who will. You say, yep, it is Charlottesville if you add tiki torches.
I mean, it's not that far off. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. Again, this has gone way beyond being pro or anti-Israeli government, pro or anti the way that they're prosecuting the war. We have to learn from history, and history shows us that when there is a motivating issue that can allow anti-Semitism to snowball, it will happen, and it is happening. We're watching it real time.